Hey guys, what's up? So in this video, I will show you how we can use the IBL method, which is the method that we use HDR images to produce some interior lighting. So you will notice that the procedure is similar to the procedural method that we use to work with interior light, but there are also some tricks that I would like to show you to enhance the final image so that we can have a nice render using HDR. We will simulate two different times of the day. First, we'll try to make a morning scene, and then we will try to produce a nice sunset with the sun casting more shadows and also with a warmer tone. So we are using here the same interior file that we used before, and we can even compare the results that we will achieve and then choose the method that you are more satisfied. We will also try to keep this file organized by working with scenes or views and saving the visual settings presets. So first of all, I will start Enscape. Okay, I can leave this window centered for now, and I'll try now to find a different angle. So I will zoom in my model, and maybe I can position my view here in the left. So I can basically use my mouse, or I can even use my keyboard arrows, and maybe I can find some interesting angle somewhere around here. I guess this one is quite nice. It's important to turn on the safe frame, and then we have a correct preview of our angle. And if we are happy with this camera position, we can save it into a scene or view. So I normally suggest to use the view management. So I'll click here. I'll then click in create view. I can call this view morning view. Okay, I'll click here create, and you can notice that now it appears here in the scenes tab and also up here in SketchUp. And now I can go on with my IBL procedure. So I'll click here in the visual settings. And once again here, to keep this file organized, I suggest to expand this window here so that we can create a preset for this view. So I'll click here in create preset. I can call it morning preset. Okay. And the first thing here that I will change is the style so that we can check our light with the material override effect. Okay, I can minimize this tab here. Okay, and it's important to say that the material override will be very important in this interior scene because we will notice how the color tones affect the walls and the other objects here, and this will help us to choose the best HDRI. So to insert the image, I have to go to Sky. I have to change here to Skybox, and now I can load my HDRI by clicking here. And I can explore the same images that we've been using. And this time I'll try this first one called Belfast. I'll click to open. And now I can see that it's already appearing here in the background, but it's not projecting correctly the light. So we have to remember to activate this option of the brightest point. And now it started to work better. And I can start now playing around with the rotation parameter to see how the HDR will create different results based on the position of the sun in the photograph. So I can try out some different values here. And I'll try to find a position where the sun can enter the room, and maybe somewhere here. I guess it's okay for a morning simulation. And of course, it's important to also play around with the brightness value. And you can notice that if we decrease this value, the image will have much more contrast and the shadows will become very dark. And if I move this to the other side, the shadows will become a little bit brighter, and we will start to notice the blue tone that is coming from the HDR, producing this very interesting skylight effect. So I'll try to move this a little bit to the right until we get a nice blue tone, and maybe somewhere around 50 or 60 will give me an interesting result with a nice saturation and a nice contrast between yellow and blue. So now maybe I can already turn off the material override. So I'll click here and I will choose the style none once again. so I can have a better picture of what's going on. And I actually think that we don't have too much to change here in our parameters, but you are free to play around with the exposure and also to explore the highlights or the color temperature as you wish. But one suggestion that I would recommend is to turn on here in the projection the 2-point perspective. So now we corrected the distortion that we had here. And it's important to say that we are able to access this parameter here because we are not using the synchronized view. Otherwise, we would have to choose the 2-point perspective directly in SketchUp. So it's nice to be able to do it here as well. And maybe I will also increase the vignette. So we have this dark borders, and I guess it's okay. And actually, one thing that is bothering me is the lack of the brightness and the soft shadows that would come from the window. We had this problem when we used the procedural method, and we are having this problem once again here. So I'll basically do the same thing that I did before. I'll bring an area light here to produce these shadows. So I can close the visual settings window. I can also close this view management and maybe place this window here on the right. And I'll basically bring this group of lights. And before bringing, maybe it's important to try to find a better angle to position them. I guess here it's fine. And finally, I can click here in File, Import, and I can use the area light file. Once again, I'll click here in Import, and I can position these lights in the same way as we did before. So first I can click any place here, and then with the snap, I can try to position it right behind this door. Maybe I can move it a little bit backwards. And we can already notice that we have a much better result. So we can see here a brighter effect coming from the window, which simulates the skylight effect. We can also see this very soft shadow here in the wall. And we can also see much more details now in our bed, for example. If you would like to compare the result with and without these area lights, you can go here in the tags folder, and here you can notice that this area light brought this light tag here. So if we hide this tag, we are actually hiding the lights, and you can see that we have no shadows, we have no details here in the bed. And once we turn this tag on again, we have a much more detailed image than before. Of course, if you are not happy with the result of this area light, you can change its intensity. So we can double click here, this group of lights. Then we can double click any of these individual lights. We can open the Enscape objects. And here you can change the value of the luminous intensity. And of course, if we increase this value, our area light will become even brighter. And if we move the slider to the left, we'll have a darker result. So you can play around with this parameter to get the best result possible for your scene. In this file here, I actually liked the original value. So I'll click here and choose set value, and I will type here once again, okay. And this was giving me a nice result. So I can close this window. And you could also apply a color to the light if you think that this light is too white, but I will just leave it as it is. And I'll click outside to leave the group. And now I can produce my final image. So I can open here the visual settings. It would be very important to increase the rendering quality. Also, if you like, you can make some fine tuning here. For example, I think that now with the area light, the image is too white. So maybe I can explore the image tab and change a little bit the color temperature, maybe set it a little bit warmer. I guess here it's quite okay. And now to produce the final image, I can basically click here in the screenshot button. Okay. I will save it as a JPEG image, and I will name it Morning Simulation. Okay, so just after a few seconds, we have our first simulation using IBL in interior scenes. So now I'll try a different time simulation and also using a different camera angle. So I'll close this window for now, and maybe I can increase this window here, and I'll try to find a different angle here in the Enscape window, maybe in the opposite side of our bedroom. So maybe somewhere here. I think it's quite okay, and maybe I'll just zoom in a little bit, and to save this view I need to create a different scene. So once again I'll click here in the view management, I'll create a new view, I'll call this view sunset view, and I'll click here to create it. Okay, so now I have two scenes in my file, the morning view and the sunset view. And for this view, I could actually use the same HDR and maybe rotate it a little bit to get a different effect. Or I could also try another HDR just to test it out. So I will once again here click in the visual settings. And before making any change here, it's important to notice that we are working with the morning preset. So this won't be a good idea because this would actually interfere in the previous simulation that we've done. So first of all, I have to expand this window and create a new preset. I'll click here, and I'll call it sunset preset. I'll click OK, and now we have two different presets, and you can notice that as we created this new preset, we are now working directly with its parameters, and our visual settings here were resetted to the original values. So now within the sunset preset, I'll start to work around with the HDR. And first I would suggest to use the white style so we can check the light in a better way. And then we go to the sky tab, and here I can change the white ground to the skybox so we can load our new HDRI. So I'll click here, and I will once again explore the HDR that I've provided. And this time I'll try this one called Spruce Sunrise, which is an HDRI that has the sun in a lower position than the previous one. So probably it will give us a more exaggerated sunset result. So once I place this HDRI here, I can click this brightest point option, and then I can start using my rotation to check the effect. So I will try different values here. I can minimize here this window, and maybe somewhere around 280 or 290 I can get an interesting result. We can see how the sun is projecting this very extensive shadows, which produces this nice sunset effect. So maybe 287, I think it's quite okay. Then I can change the brightness value to see different effects. And if I increase it to a value around 20,000 or even more, you can notice that the blue skylight will be more noticeable here, producing a nice color for my image, contrasting with the yellow sun. So maybe somewhere around 23,000, I guess it's quite okay. And I have a nice saturated image. And of course, after adjusting here the skybox, we can once again explore the image tab or the main tab and play around with the parameters. For example, maybe we can decrease a little bit the exposure so the image is not so bright for a sunset. We could also play around with the color temperature, maybe decreasing a little bit so that it gets warmer. Maybe we can increase the highlights so the sun has a more powerful effect. Also the bloom, so that we have a little bit of glare. So feel free to play around with these settings. And I would also suggest to once again here in the main tab choose the 2-point perspective so we get the same vertical correction as we had in the other view. And of course now it's important to return to the original style so we can see the result with the materials. And it's also important to remind that you could also change the value of the area light and also its colors if you would like to change a little bit the way the brightness is being simulated here, but I guess it's quite okay and I'm happy with this result. So if I would like to produce the final image, I can basically increase my rendering quality, and then I can hit the screenshot button up here. I will also save it as a JPEG, and this time I will name it as Sunset Simulation. Okay, so now, just after a few seconds, we have our sunset image produced with the IBL system. And to finish this video, it's important to organize the file. I actually created 2 different views and 2 different presets, but I forgot to link them. So I'll do this now. First, I'll click here in the morning view to edit it, and I can link the morning view to the morning preset, and then I can save it. So now we have this specific angle with the specific HDRI and other parameters that we've changed. And I'll also do the same thing with the sunset view. I'll click here in this button. I'll click here in the linked visual preset and I'll choose the sunset preset. So now we have the different HDRI. I will save it. And now if we change the views, so for example, if I click in the morning view, we'll have different camera view with a different HDR based on the morning preset. And if I return to the sunset view, we have another view with another HDR based on the sunset preset. So this procedure helps us to keep this file organized. And it's also very important to say that obviously we used 2 different HDRIs, so the background is different. So you have to be careful, but in many cases we use different HDRIs to produce a nice light effect, but we can change the background in the post-production, so this won't be a problem depending on the workflow that you are going to use.